Hey everybody, KC here. So, I have no memory of ever having been on a farm. I don't think I have. I just don't remember ever having done it. Vineyard, yes. Farm, not so much. That said, I just finished having a conversation with a guy named Joe Blunda. And Joe Blunda is a farmer, but he's my kind of farmer. Because Joe Blunda's farm is in a parking lot. It's in a container parked in the parking lot of a Roche Brothers near Boston. And basically, what he's involved in is vertical farming, or the other term for it is controlled environment agriculture. And he's growing all sorts of greens in this thing that are being sold in 4 different Roche Brothers stores. This is fascinating to me. I mean, first of all, think of all the resources that don't have to be spent in terms of getting the lettuce from the farm to the store. No trucks. All they have to do is walk it across the parking lot. Anyway, I just had a conversation with Joe. Really interesting guy, fascinating idea. It's still sort of in the experimental stage, although they're really, really close. And I think this is a real opportunity for especially independent retailers to kind of talk to a guy like Joe and find out how can you help me differentiate myself in the same way he's helping them. He's helping Roche Brothers differentiate themselves. So anyway, the guy is Joe Blunda. The company is called Watch City Farms. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Joe Blunda. Joe Blunda, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Good morning, Kevin. Good to be here.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a vertical farm. You're clearly not in it because the vertical farm doesn't have great internet. But your business is to create vertical farms, and in this case, you're in a Roche Brothers parking lot in Boston. Tell me about it.
Yes, absolutely. My job, my project, and I've begun working with Roche Brothers because they've been an amazing partner to me on other things and are really psyched about this. So my project is to locate controlled environment agriculture, or CEA facilities, particularly container farms, really co-locate the supply that these farms represent with the demand, and in a very literal sense, literally put it in the parking lot of in this case, a Roche Brothers and on the South Shore of Boston in Massachusetts. So really cool project.
So it is basically a tractor trailer.
Essentially, without the wheels. Think of it as the other thing I say is, if you imagine or visualize a container ship, a picture of that, each of the containers is essentially they come out of service, they get retired. The insulated ones that transfer temperature controlled goods across the ocean, and once they come into retirement, they're available at a reasonable price. And there are a number of companies, including my technology partner, that acquire those and retrofit them because they're perfect environments to grow food in.
Now, in this case, you're growing greens. Right? I mean, it's just at this point, it's just lettuce, spinach, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, it's kale, it's arugula, some microgreens, some basil, and some lettuces.
Okay. So are you using, what's the technology? Is it hydroponics? What goes into this?
Right. There are, the CEA spectrum, so to speak. There's a wide range of technologies and a wide range of underlying growing practices, from aquaponic to aeroponic to fogponic is something fairly new. And in my case,
what is fogponic?
I'm not the authority on it. I would say it's something, so, finer mist. I don't know, but
Okay.
it is something in between, air and what I use, which is true hydroponics, which is a full submerging of the plant root system in nutrient liquid. So essentially liquefied fertilizer. So that happens on a regular cycle. Because these are in containers, there's no sun access into the container. So we provide light using LEDs, a lot of them. It's quite bright. I think folks will see pictures of that. And as a result, it's a very highly controlled and potentially perfect environment to grow food in 365 days a year, regardless of what's happening outside the container.
How much juice? I mean, I know we're going to talk about the sustainability issue, part of this. Does it use a lot of juice with all this?
It does. I would say the sustainability benefits of co-locating controlled environment agriculture with demand infrastructure with a retailer or other demand what's really sustainable about them is not their electricity use. That is really a liability on the sustainability side. They are very intensive electricity users. Obviously, LEDs are a lot better than CFL and other prior technologies for lighting, but it's intense and a dense electricity user.
Could you supplement that with solar panels?
You can, and there are a number of designs underway. I would say there's still a mismatch between the density of usage and the density of power that a solar solution can provide in terms of one-to-one. But yeah, you can offset it with solar. There are also some cool programs that allow you to purchase certain types of power that are produced in a more green fashion and other things to offset the overall impact of the solution. But ideally, a more technological, direct solution is in our near future.
So you've got this trailer. How much? And right now it's one trailer, one store.
Yes.
So you're supplying at least some of the greens that you mentioned to this one store, not beyond that, right? At this point.
Well, so the farm is so productive that it can supply more than one store with a number of the products I described. In this case, at Roche, they're experimenting with 4 stores using either all or a subset of the products that I grow.
How much are you able to grow? I mean, are you able to? I mean, I'm not even sure how you'd measure it, but are you able?
How do you measure it? Right.
Right, but I mean, are you able to? Do you have a sense of what percentage of their greens sales are coming out of your trailer?
Yeah, it's essentially about 100% of their arugula and kale sales and 100% of their basil sales for the stores that are using the product are serviced by the farm. So the farm's able to, and that's how I measure it. How many stores worth of demand are we talking about here? I would say that the farm probably can't service 100% of demand for all the products it produces for all of those 4 stores, but for some of them, it can service 100% of it. So, if you think stores equals farms, it's probably one farm equals 2 to 3 stores in terms of full product diversity and 100% coverage.
So basically, they don't have to, for at least those stores, they don't have to source arugula from anybody else. You're providing all their arugula.
They don't have to source arugula from anybody else.
So, what about, is Roche Brothers clearly are they marketing in that way? Are they saying, hey, we grew this in the parking lot kind of thing?
They are. Although I'll say one of the interesting learning experiences we've had with the project, which is still very much an experiment. It's one store, one farm in terms of locations right now. But one of the big learnings is that consumers haven't really ingested or taken on that information. They see the product, they see it marketed in a particular environment. They understand that it's Roche's own product and that they grew it themselves. But beyond that, consumers don't really understand that, it's out in the parking lot. It's that big box. It's me, the farmer, who actually produced it for them, even though there's a lot of marketing information that tells that story. So
They're just not paying attention.
Yeah, well, it's just, they're not paying attention. They're moving through a supermarket. They encounter a display. They pick up some information from that display, but not 100% of it.
Well, it speaks well for the seamlessness of it, right? If people are buying arugula and they don't realize that it's not coming from California or Mexico, it's coming from, a container out in the parking lot, right, and they don't even realize it, that actually says something about the quality of it. Now, I can remember, and I to be honest, I can't remember how many years ago it was, but it's got to be more than 20 years ago, going to a Fiesta Mart in Texas, and it was an experiment, and you'd walk in, and some morning news readers may remember this. There was an entire glass wall. It had to be, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet high, and behind it was a tiered hydroponic farm. And it was spectacular. It was one of the coolest produce departments I've ever seen. It didn't last very long because it wasn't economically viable. And I think maybe the technology wasn't there yet. Is there the potential, and you said this is still an experiment, but once everything proves out the way you're obviously hoping it will, and Roche is hoping it will, is there the opportunity to create not something maybe on that scale, but a more theatrical part experience where it could be actually on a behind a glass wall in a store, so people could see the greens being grown. There'd be more direct consumer exposure to what's happening.
The short answer is yes. I do
That was a
think
long question.
one of, yeah, one of the most interesting things about CEA today versus, the Fiesta example you've given, and I would just take a moment and say, 20 years later, it still sticks in your mind, right? The drama
Totally.
and intensity of that customer experience, that shopping experience. So I think the power is still there. Certainly, the base premise of this project is the belief that we can deliver with better technology today and down the road. We can deliver better and better economics for those integrated solutions. I do think there is a play, and one of the things that Roche Brothers was really excited about on day one when we were all sitting around saying, "Are we going to do this?" Is the potential of bringing that closer and closer to the customer, the actual growing of the product integrated in some way into the customer shopping experience. I think there are a lot of different ways right now that indies and some of their larger peers are trying to evaluate how to transform the shopping experience, the physical experience. We know that stores are here to stay, that errand is here to stay. E-commerce isn't going to gobble it up tomorrow. And so delivering that store experience in a differentiated one, there's a lot of different ways and even dissonant ways that people are evaluating that right now. So this has a lot of power to deliver that in-store experience in the same way that you're talking about. I do think, as an experiment, there's still a lot of technical things to nail down and a lot of economics to deliver and evaluate on a crop by crop basis, but the potential is there, and that's why we're doing it.
Is there crop by crop? Is there the potential to move beyond greens and move to, I don't know, tomatoes, other kinds of fruits and vegetables?
Yes, absolutely yes. Particularly berries, I would say, is something that has a lot of active R&D going on in the CEA community in general. I think the economics of those crops, some of them work, some of them don't yet work, but have the clear potential to work. I think, as we continue to see incremental automation, incremental reduction in the requirements of technologies to operate and things like that, we are closing in on the margin between, not quite in the money and definitely in the money and good to go.
I was going to ask, have you figured out, the ROI on something like this? Are you to the point, or is that something that's still sort of being worked out?
I would say as we tweak the crop, what's going to sell in volume, it's easy, particularly on the production side, to forget that customers have to buy this in order for it to sell. Right. Very simple. So as we nail those things down, ironing out the exact ROI is certainly a piece of it. But I would say that, the ROI is looking, you can see 4 and 5 year ROIs, against pretty high CapEx sometimes in the CEA space. We should be seeing fundamentally shorter ROIs. And the experiment, as it's conceived right now with the crops it's growing and selling, does deliver significantly lower ROI.
Does the cost of the product, does that tend to be pretty consistent? We're taking a lot of costs out of the system because instead of all the, you got to, grow it and pick it and put it, wash it and put it on trucks or trains or whatever, and take it to, maybe fly, take it 3,000 miles, whatever it happens to be. Right. In this case, right. You're growing it, you're walking across the parking lot. So yes. You're taking a lot of costs out of the system, not to mention all the resources that are used to deliver it cross country, let's say. Yeah. But you're also got a lot of technology you're paying for. Is it pretty much a wash in terms of the cost of the product itself to the shopper?
I would say it's very consistent, the cost of the product. The environment and the cost of inputs is quite consistent at this scale. I think you'll see the larger CEA installations that are going in and getting a lot of funding right now are really dialing in on how to deliver, 10% cost reduction on this input, 5% cost reduction or labor reduction here and there, because they're delivering, increasingly commoditized crops at scale. At this scale and with this diversity of crop, it's a very consistent pricing model that can be delivered because the product is grown in a very consistent, almost perfectly consistent environment day over day over day for years. Yeah.
I've been to one of the Plenty installations in Northern California, right? And which are, it's unbelievable. And the amount of technology that is going into that, I mean, it's expensive, right? Which is one of the reasons they've gotten, I'm guessing, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of
Yes,
investment,
it's a lot of money.
including from Walmart, which I think
Right.
is a big investor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big nut, but it sounds like to some degree, you're going to be able to deliver the same deliver on the same value proposition, but at not nearly the cost. Is that fair?
I'm not really sure on the cost side. I would say it not, it's
Well,
a
only in the sense
fundamentally.
that it doesn't cost as much to outfit a tractor trailer as it does to one of their enormous warehouses.
Oh, sure. On a total cost basis, these things are, these containers are pretty small. They're sort of bite-sized, plunk them down, plug them in, you're good to go, pieces of technology. I would say that there are also slightly different value propositions. My value proposition and the one that we're experimenting with right now is a little more differentiated in terms of product with certain qualities. Arugula that's spicier, for example, bigger flavor that can be grown under more ideal conditions for that particular crop and that varietal, and things like that. So an opportunity to deliver something that feels and tastes and has the characteristics of gourmet. Whereas, as I understand it, and I'm not involved in any way, but as I understand it, that deal you were referring to probably is a little more about delivering consistent, core product, disintermediating supply chain, some of the other things that I'm sure Walmart is extremely interested in as they think about their global supplies. Whereas this, it has the same components, the opportunity to remove some supply chain risk, but also on the top end, the opportunity to deliver something differentiated to a customer who is going to be loyal to the best fresh food they can get their hands on.
Yeah. So you said this is still an experiment. It's one trailer in the parking lot of one store, but you're able to deliver to four. How close are you to being able to kind of roll this out so that it has, so you could, be at other companies, other chains, other independents? I mean, where are you in the sort of the development process?
So I would say that experiment is the right word for it. We're not really at a point with the Roche project where it's going to be expanded very quickly. I think that's because we really want to nail down some key aspects of those crops and confirm that we can really grow the full diversity with the quality and the consistency that we want. That said, this is tried and true technology that we're deploying. The crop varieties and that particular combination is really what's still experimental about this, above all other things. So the technology that underlies it is a good decade old at this point and has seen multiple incremental improvements. So I would say that in some sense now, in other senses, what we've really learned from this very early in the process is that this is a partnership, not a technology at the end of the day. It's a technology enabled partnership, but it has to be an open book partnership where there is going to be a solution that I think is probably unique retailer by retailer and even region and location by location in terms of what crop, how, what's interesting, pricing, et cetera. And so that process of partnering to deliver a supply chain solution with CEA that really is customized to the needs of the retailer, that's more of a multi-month process and something that is the real product that the technology sits behind and executes.
That's interesting, though, that I didn't realize that the technology is not the experiment. The experiment is fine tuning the selection to figure out which crops work best on an absolute basis, but also what crops work best for the retailer in this case.
Absolutely. And the technology does continue to get incremental improvements. And there is a component, it's not zero, right? There is a component of experimentalism here. But yes, the emphasis is on the crop configuration when we think about what's most untested and what's most needing of continued technical investment.
So I'm going to try and pin you down on this just because people may want to reach out. People are going to want to reach out to you. So are you a year away from being able to, if you had to guess, obviously, now that you don't know for sure, are you a year? I mean, 2024, is that likely when this might start to get the kind of traction where you could do this in other places?
Yeah, I mean, I could start tomorrow. Yeah, to pin me down or to pin
Right.
this down. If someone reached out tomorrow, another indie, and said, "I want to put this together," I'd say we're probably 6 to 8 months away from growing product for them,
Right.
because that can be begun today. But it's going to be a data-rich exercise up front to think about crops and things like that. But the models, what you plug in, what grows well together, and what should start well and thrive together is pretty well defined. And so it's more of a going through the process of designing and delivering a solution that's customized that adds time to, not being able to flip the light switch on one of these tomorrow.
So if people want to check out what you're doing, you have a website, and if they want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, best way is directly through email. I am very much Roche developed their own brand for this, so the best I've tried to kind of keep a low corporate profile separately. So the best way to do it, it's Joe at watchcityfarms.com, and that's what I've got. I think depending on where this goes in the next 6 to 8 months, I'll probably stand up a wider, higher profile brand. But for right now, I'm really trying to, and my partners are really trying to nail down what's scalable before, running before we can walk and chew gum at the same time, if you will.
Hey, listen, every retailer out there should be looking for any way they can do a differential advantage. And if they and this sounds exactly like what Roche has done. And when you can bring that to other retailers, I think it's going to be an enormous win. So listen, I'll make sure I put your email address below. I will make sure that there's pictures below so people can get a sense of what you're doing. And I wish you the best of luck. And I hope next time I'm up in Boston, I can come by and see what you're up to.
I'd love to show it to you and appreciate your time and look forward to sharing this with anybody who's curious to learn more.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thanks, Kevin.